Thank you, Zach. I will not be shaken. That's easy to say. Sometimes it feels like an earthquake around you, and maybe the little piece of ground you're standing on is stable, but everything's moving around you. And it's an interesting time to be able to look to the Lord and say, I'll not be shaken. I'm going to be rest in you. Well, I have an interesting story this morning about a journey that Lori Koch and Annette and I took about 20 years ago, I guess, to Ukraine. We were just setting up relationships with the Ukraine Bible Society, and we were invited to come, and so we went. Had a lot of experiences there, and one of those experiences was we went down to the city square, and in a parking lot, students and others would put out books on kind of like a flea market kind of a situation, and sell them. So Annette that's a world she would live in if she could. She just loves to go to thrift marts, garage sales, anything where somebody wants to give away their stuff for a song and a dance. And anyway, on this blanket, there's an old guy, teeth was rotted out, and many were missing. And he had this big book that was about 6 inches thick, big black book. And it had a cross on it. And she wasn't sure what it was. She picked it up, and the representative of the Bible Society was with us. And he identified it as a Ukrainian Bible. He called it, and we said, Bible. And it was, we'll move on, just not quite yet. He said, yeah, the type in that shows it was done in 1930s originally. And it was a pretty scruffed up looking book. The binding looked good. And then he went on to tell us the story. He said, it's the Tyre Bible. And he had kind of an accent. So we had to, let's go back to the very beginning, please. Okay, that's good. I'll stay there while I tell the story. And then I'll cue you. And we said, can you spell that? Because with his accent, we weren't sure exactly what he was saying. And he said, Tire, a Tyre Bible. We said, what's that? He said, when the Russians took over Ukraine, they forced people to move, and they confiscated all Bibles. And so what people would do is when they had to move, they would take that Bible and they would cut it into sections, slice it into small sections, and then they'd put inside the tire on their car. And so as they drove to their new destination, that was like in a dryer tumbler, the sections of the Bible that were there were tumbling, and it scruffed the pages up and messed it up. So let's go to the next slide. So that's what it looks like on the outside. And that's what Annette saw. And this is what was inside. You can see the scruff from the tires and on the edge. And this is now pages that were in the original Bible, typeset and printed. So this is what it looked like if you'd have bought it in the store, only not messed up. And so let's go to the next slide. This is the original size. You see that corner up there, that burgundy-looking corner. That's the original size of the Bible was. So what they had to do, because the edges of the pages were damaged, they had to trim it down. Well, this particular one page in the whole Bible had a corner turned. And so that gave us an ability to see what the original size and look at the Bible was before they trimmed it down. And that also, you can see the typeface there. And that identified the Bible to the 1930s, the type of type style that they used. So let's go to the next one. So this is where they had to replace some pages. And this is done on a typewriter. and then those pages were inserted in when they rebound the book. There's a lot of pages like that in there. And of course, that's why it's not all scruffed up, because it was done after the Bible was removed from the tire. So we began asking questions. Well, who typed that, and how did that happen? And the general secretary of the Bible Society was married to the daughter of a man who had a whole bunch of volunteers who were typing the Bible secretly. They would go to jail if they were caught. And so they had a whole system set up where the general secretary, as a young man, maintained the typewriters, and then he would shift the keys, move the keys around between the different typewriters so they couldn't be identified and traced, because they had KGB outside some of their buildings looking for these people that were typing these Bibles. And the volunteers that were doing this were hiding in the closets in their apartments. And of course, they were in public kind of apartments. And so they were typing in a space where they could control the sound as best they could and not let anybody know what they were doing. And what they did is he supplied them with the thinnest paper he could buy or get a hold of. And sometimes it was thicker, sometimes it was thinner. And it got carbon paper for some of you young people. Now, if you don't know what carbon paper is, or even what a typewriter is with those manual keys, but that's what he had. And so he would try to get as many copies in each typing as he could, because it was so laborious. And so you can imagine that if they got 5 copies, 5 carbon copies, the original would look pretty good, maybe, it depends on the ribbon. And then the carbon copies would get lighter and lighter as you got more paper. And you can imagine then what some of those Bibles look like after they were typed. The man that was coordinating that finally got arrested, put in prison. And he was put in a prison where he almost died. He was over the sewer system. They were packed in where you just had space hardly almost to be able to stand. And he almost died. He was in that prison for 7 years. And but he'd done all this work. And so what they would do is when they got certain portions done, the ladies would hide these Bibles in their skirts, and at gatherings like weddings or funerals or celebrations of some kind, then they would secretly go and hand out these typed portions of the Bible to people, and try not to get caught doing it, because they would go to jail, and many of them did. But it was a very interesting thing to hear. His wife, the father's wife, when he was in prison, she was ostracized by the government. She didn't get any resources, and so people had to just hide food for them. They said they put apples in trees and just did put food in different places to keep them alive and keep them, the family, because they had children, alive. And it was a tough time, but they're having to do this thing secretly. So let's go to the next slide. You can tell how old I am. I'm talking about slides. We're on a digital thing here. So that's how the Bible looked after it was finished. And why I'm making this presentation this morning is that we are in a similar situation with the audio Bible. It's such a parallel. We are doing oral Bible translation in places where there is no type, there's no orthography, and there are places where it's very dangerous. We have people using our system that we can record online secretly and then upload it. So we have people in closets doing audio recording of Bibles for people who are illiterate, can't read. Very similar to these ladies in Ukraine who are hiding in closets typing the Bible secretly to distribute it. And I was shocked at the parallel that this Bible has. And then the question that came to me, because some of our folks deal with quality issues. When you look inside this Bible, so let's flip back to one of the ugly slides of the Bible if we can. Is that a Bible? For you who have a high quality demand, you want your binding a certain way in gold, trim on the edges of the pages and leather bound. Is this a Bible? Does this contain the Word of God? And some of our recordings look like this. And I say our recordings done by people in field conditions. We just heard a story about a recording that was taking place, and there's so much noise and so much activity and so much danger, they couldn't do it in the city. So they got in a car and they drove out in the jungle to find a quiet place and turned their car into a recording studio. Now, for us to say we're not going to accept that recording because it wasn't done professionally in a studio, and that was the best they can get, would be like somebody taking this Bible, it's something at the risk of their life, put together, and we would reject it as a Bible. It has the truth in it. May not be the best quality, but it has the truth in it. So that's the journey of this Bible, and that's the example I just wanted to share with you this morning, realizing that we discovered this with a toothless man with decayed teeth, selling it on a blanket in a public square with a bunch of students around. And we picked it up, and Annette picked it up, and over 20 years later, it becomes an example of what we're experiencing today. When I wrote the standards for our recordings, we had 3 or 4 languages we were recording. They could all be done in professional studios. Everything could be done professional. It was cassette tapes, and we're giving them to people. They put them in their players. There was a real competitive thing happening. And now we're in a different time. We're in a time when we're reaching out to societies that don't have many resources, don't have many abilities to make a quality product, but they're getting the truth down in sound that we can distribute. And we need to be sensitive to that. And it's going to be hard for some of us who are audiophiles. We know what good sound is, and yet we be like the Bible Society rejecting this Bible that we just showed you. It's the truth. It's put together by people who made great sacrifice, some who spent time in prison, and some maybe beaten and died as a result of it.